Hey guys, Mrs. Karaz here. Today we're looking at the Middle Colonies, which is Chapter 3, Section 3. So the Middle Colonies are New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. If we're looking at their geography, we see that there's obviously access to the coast. There are many rivers that run through this area, which means there are a lot of major port cities here. Trade is going to become very valuable here. We also see a warmer climate and longer growing season than there are in the New England colonies, so that means we have land that works for farming. The soil in the middle colonies is especially good for wheat, fruit, and vegetables. So New York we've actually heard about before in previous sections, but we will review. So you'll remember that New York was originally called New Netherland because it was established as a colony by the Dutch. And New Netherland had an active fur trade with Native Americans. The English were unhappy with this situation. So they had problems with the Dutch, and they saw that New Netherland at the time, was such a powerful port, and they wanted control of that port. So in 1664, the English seized control of New Netherland from the Dutch. They took it over, and they renamed it after the Duke of York, which is why we are now New York. So New Jersey was originally a part of New York, but in 1665 it broke off to form its own colony, So at first, New Jersey was a proprietary colony, and a proprietary colony is one that is controlled by an individual person or family who is given permission to control it by the king. But in 1702, the status changed and New Jersey became a royal colony, which means it was controlled directly by the King of England. There wasn't, while there are governors and other people that, get to make the laws, the king himself plays a much bigger role than he would have played if it was a proprietary colony. Moving on to Quakers. So far in the last two colonies, right, we didn't see much religion-inspiring things, but we do now. So Quakers were a religious group in England who had some beliefs that were very different from other religious groups at the time. Quakers believed that every individual person had a direct connection with God. And since everyone was directly connected to God, you don't need ministers, right? You don't need priests. You don't need anything along those lines because the people themselves can communicate with God. Quakers believed that women were equal to men. Quakers believed that slavery was wrong. So sitting here from our modern perspective, I see a lot that Quakers got pretty right. A wealthy Quaker named William Penn knew King Charles II, and he used his connection with King Charles to get a charter to start a Quaker colony here in North America. Yes, I am recording at school, and yes, that was the bell. Shockingly, Penn established the colony of Pennsylvania in 1862. To attract settlers to Pennsylvania, Penn printed flyers in different languages and distributed them throughout Europe. And this, to me, is really a testament to how diverse he wanted this colony to be, and how he's really trying to live those Quaker beliefs that we saw on the last slide. Penn thought of his colony as a holy experiment. He wanted to prove that people from different backgrounds could live together peacefully. And Penn even tried to keep peace with the Native Americans, which is something we're not seeing from many English settlers here in the colonies. And he just demanded that if settlers were going to take land from Native Americans, they had to buy that land. They couldn't just take it. So moving on to Delaware. Penn's original charter from the king included the land that later became Delaware. And it's actually a pretty simple and not so exciting story. Delaware became its own colony because the distance to Pennsylvania's assembly was too far, right? It was just a long distance to travel to participate in local government. So Penn let Delaware set up its own representative assembly and establish its own government and therefore become the separate colony of Delaware. Looking at industries in the middle colonies, we're going to see that not surprisingly because of their name, they have some things in common with the New England colonies in the north, and then with the southern colonies below them. So farms were really successful in the middle colonies. Pennsylvania was called America's breadbasket because it produced so much wheat. Manufacturers produced iron, flour, and paper from natural resources in the area. We also get a sense of industry developing. Shoemakers, carpenters, masons, and weavers are all developing strong trades in the middle colonies at this time. The final slide of the middle colonies is the backcountry. So the backcountry was a frontier region extending through several colonies, and it consisted of undeveloped land, right? Primarily non-English immigrants would settle there. A trail led through the backcountry from Pennsylvania to Georgia called the Covered Wagon Road. Many backcountry settlers clashed with Native Americans, and you'll see that the backcountry comes up more in later chapters. It's this edge of like what's developed versus what's undeveloped, and laws are going to be enforced less strictly there. That is it for us today, people. Have a lovely afternoon.